Chapter 44. A Demon in Kakariko. Noboru led the way through the spirit temple, with Link and Sheik almost running to keep up. The trek back to the entrance was uneventful, for they encountered no traps, monsters, or magical apparitions of any kind. Noboru did frown when she saw the tiny markers Sheik had carved into the walls, but said nothing. "Did you bring a horse?" Noboru asked, as they entered yet another lavishly decorated corridor, with tiles featuring flowers and leaf motifs. The side rooms appeared to be designed for pilgrims. There was a dining hall, a library brimming with scrolls, and dormitories. Link only got a fleeting glance of them, for Noboru did not pause. "Of course," Sheik said. "We didn't use the portal to get here." "A good thing you didn't," Noboru said. "I doubt your welcome would have been warm, not with the twin Rova sisters around. I do hope Avil was more accommodating when you met her."
"Actually, she threw us in a cell,"
Navi said. Noboru frowned again. "Well, I'm sure that won't happen again." She slowed down, glancing sideways at Link with a curious expression. "Just how did you escape?" "We used a portal stone," Sheik explained. "Ah, I should have guessed," Noboru replied. "We had help," Link admitted. "Some of the Gerudo were freed from the curse. Avil was one of them." "I know," Noboru said. "The witches, or rather their phantoms, wanted to use me for exterminating the rebel Gerudo." She grimaced, her expression growing hard. "Ganondorf will pay for what he's done." She sounded as though she wanted to storm Ganondorf's tower and confront him herself. Link didn't entertain the thought. He knew how horribly wrong it would go without the power of the sages behind him. They only had one sage left to find: the Sage of Shadow. Since Shadow was most commonly associated with the Sheikah, Link guessed that the final sage would be a Sheikah. That left two people who could be the final sage: Impa or Halvard. Link would have been surprised if Rauru appointed the Masked Man to this role. All of the sages, except Rauru, were revered leaders of their people, and Halvard seemed content to remain a creepy merchant turned spy. Link knew that Impa had been a leader amongst her people, and he guessed that she became their leader after her assassination of the former Gerudo king. That puzzled Link. Impa had disobeyed her superiors. If the Sheikah knew the Gerudo prince's fate, he doubted Impa's failure would have gone unpunished. What had happened to Impa after that night? And why did she try assassinating Ganondorf, only to spare him at the last moment? It was a decision that had sealed Link's fate, sending Hyrule towards a path of destruction. Perhaps something else had motivated the Sheikah to assassinate the Gerudo king, and the prophecy was used to justify the murder. Had that been what made Impa pause and question her High Seer's judgment? What else could have motivated the Sheikah to kill the Gerudo king? Link shook his head, unable to sort out his thoughts as fatigue settled on him like a heavy weight. "You alright, kid?" Link was almost startled when Noboru spoke. She had paused, leaving Link to nearly run straight into her. "I'm fine. I was just distracted, that's all," he assured her. "It's nothing." Noboru didn't look convinced, but she nodded, and then gestured for Link to keep following her. They entered the temple's central chambers and discovered several Gerudo standing just inside the door. They must have been expecting trouble, for their veils were raised. However, the moment they saw Noboru, they gaped and lowered the cloths from their faces. Link recognized Shinju immediately. She was the only one with her hair down, which seemed more common amongst the lower-ranking Gerudo. "Noboru!" she gasped, astonished. "Hello, Shinju," Noboru said warmly. "It's good to see you." "We have dearly missed your counsel," said one of the other women. "Avil should be here with the others shortly." "Others?" Noboru asked quizzically. "Once we secured the fortress, Avil had the other Kokiri brought here," Shinju explained. "She said you, or rather these two," she nodded towards Link and Sheik, "had a means to activate the portal outside and send them home." "We do," Link said, feeling a rush of gratitude towards Avil and the Gerudo who followed her. This meant that his oath to the Great Deku Tree was finally fulfilled. The Kokiri are finally going home, he thought, brimming with a sense of relief and happiness that seemed both foreign and strange.
What did you plan to do if we weren't here?
Navi asked. We would have sent a message. The temple could have accommodated us for a time, Shinju replied before turning back to Naburu. It's been 7 years, Naburu. What happened? We thought you were dead. Will you lead us again? Another Gerudo asked. Will we march the spears? Naburu rose a hand to stop the storm of questions. It will take more than 2 stupid hags to kill me, she answered. I will answer your questions, but first, there are some things I must attend to. Naburu paused and then gestured to Shinju. Take me to Avil. There is much I need to discuss with her. Shinju led the way out of the temple, with Naburu and her small entourage in tow. More Gerudo were marching into the front plaza of the temple. Astride a black horse, Avil led them. At the sight of Naburu's small company, she dismounted and waved off offers of assistance as she braced herself against her steed. Her leg, Link noticed, was bandaged, and she leaned heavily on the spear that was offered to her. She strode forward, and Naburu quickened her pace to join her. Beside the dais. Avil greeted her former queen in their native tongue, and Naburu answered her before clasping shoulders with the woman. It has been too long, Naburu, Avil said. It's good to see you too, Avil, Naburu said. I'm glad you managed to talk some sense into the other counselors and force Ganondorf to abdicate. There wasn't much diplomacy involved, Avil said. He was stabbed. So I heard, Naburu said dryly. I am sorry that it came to this, Avil offered more solemnly, her voice so soft that Link barely heard the words. Ganondorf chose his path, Naburu said quietly, her expression growing cold. The man I knew is long dead, Avil, as is the kingdom he fought for. Avil looked troubled by these words. Her eyes widened a little, and she swallowed. Of course, she said, almost hoarsely. Shall I have refreshments prepared in my tent? I could do with something other than roasted lever, Naburu said with a slight smile. Yes, some tea would be most welcome. 2 Gerudo quickly hastened away to carry out Naburu's request. Tell me, Avil, Naburu said once the others had departed. Is it true Ganondorf survived after he was stabbed? How did you know that? Avil asked in surprise. Wait, Ganondorf survived? Link blurted out before he could stop himself. The 2 Gerudo glanced at him. Avil with narrowed eyes. Link swallowed. They probably thought he was insubordinate for interrupting somebody of a high rank. In truth, the news should not have come as a surprise. Link knew Halvard suspected that Ganondorf couldn't be killed so easily, and neither Sheik nor Naburu were convinced he was dead. Still, a part of him wanted to cling to that belief that he'd never have to face the former Gerudo King. Only the Master Sword can finish him. Lost in his thoughts, Link hardly noticed Naburu and Avil speaking. Avil gestured to one of her guards, and Link was taken aback when several Gerudo appeared, ushering forward a bedraggled group of Kokiri. Many of them appeared confused, some staring at their captors with wary expressions. They were quiet, far quieter than they should have been. Several Kokiri noticed Navi hovering beside Link and pointed at her. Their own sprites hovered beside them. Some of them recognized Navi and greeted her. They sounded more relieved than confused, probably because they'd seen her back in the fortress. Link spotted a few familiar faces amongst the Kokiri, but he was unable to spot anyone that he knew well. To his immediate relief, the girl who Ganondorf had used as a hostage stood amidst the gathered crowd. One of the boys at the front, who was just a head taller than his kin, stared at Navi and then at Link. Why do you have a fairy? He piped up, curiosity shining in his eyes. What's her name? Navi, Link answered. I met her in the woods. The boy looked at him, as if weighing the truth of his words. Are we really going home? He asked, Soraya said she'd find a way, but she disappeared. Some of the others did too. Yes, Link answered. Seeing the boy was uncomfortable, and knowing his scarred appearance probably wasn't helping, Link knelt. Soraya sent Navi and I to help you. Link saw no point in confusing this boy by explaining that he also grew up amongst the Kokiri.
She did?
The boy asked, a flicker of hope lighting his blue eyes. It was an unusual color for a Kokiri.
How do you know her?
Navi introduced me to her, Link said, gesturing at Navi. She didn't chastise him for lying, even though Link half expected it. What's your name?
Fado, from Bando Grove,
the boy answered. He shared his name with Fado from Link's home. Fado looked back at the portal, appearing afraid.
This portal will really take us back?
Really, Link replied. I promise. All I have to do is activate it, and you'll be back at the Sacred Forest Meadow. Fado looked at him and smiled.
Will you come with us?
Link's heart ached. He wanted to return to the forest and see Forens and the others. He wanted to tell the Great Deku Tree, or rather his successor, that he had done what the Great Deku Tree asked. One look at the expression on Sheik's face, once again passive and hard, told him that he wouldn't be going back. Not yet. He still had a job to do. Not right now, but I'll come as soon as I can. He held out a hand. Fado hesitated and then shook it.
Thank you.
He paused, frowning.
What's your name?
Link. Link almost winced, wishing he'd held his tongue. There was no doubt that his name, and his infamy at failing to save the Great Deku Tree, was not forgotten. Many of the Kokiri wouldn't forgive him. If Fado connected the dots between him and their forest guardian's demise, he gave no sign of it. Link, we need to get moving. Avil says there is trouble near Kakariko. Sheik murmured quietly. I will help you see the Kokiri home, and then we must head there. Even though fear stirred inside of him, Link nodded, doing his best to remain calm. He didn't want to frighten Fado or the others, though it was doubtful the Kokiri were as timid or go-lucky as they were before their capture. Despite his efforts, Link wasn't able to stop the trickle of dread he felt, knowing that something was wrong. Gather your friends. You should be able to step onto the portal 20 at a time, Link said, doing his best to sound strong and hide his fear. Once you arrive at the forest meadow, don't linger on the dais. Head into the forest temple. You'll find the others there.
Thank you, Link,
Fado said. Fado turned to speak to his kin, talking in native Kokiri. The others all looked at Link with wide, inquisitive eyes. Then, after a gesture from Fado, they began marching onto the dais. You should do the honors, Sheik said. Link nodded, his throat tightening and eyes prickling with tears he refused to shed in front of Sheik. He had to be strong. Thanks, he managed hoarsely. He stepped onto the dais and turned to face Fado. Ready? Link asked him, pulling the ocarina from his pocket.
Ready,
Fado answered. I'm going to step off the dais before the portal activates, he said. Make sure the others stay in position. Fado nodded, and Link began to play the ocarina, blowing into the mouthpiece as his fingers tapped to the melody of Minuet of the Forest. As it did, the portal hummed, coming to life, and upon that cue, Link stepped off the platform. Several Kokiri cried out in shock as blue flames licked the rim of the dais. It's all right, Link said, loud enough for his voice to carry. Just stay still. He saw Fado wave in farewell, and then he and the others vanished in a bright flash of light. The remaining Kokiri gasped, some murmuring and others sounding afraid. Reassuring them, Link gestured for the next group to gather on the dais. They did. Once the last group left, Link could barely believe it. He was sore and exhausted, but he'd finally done it.
I told you that you would,
Navi whispered. Yeah, Link replied, wiping a stray tear from his cheek, unable to contain all of his emotions. You did. He hardly noticed Noburu step beside him, gazing at the portal. That was a good thing you did, kid. She clapped him on the back, smiling. Gather your horse. You still have one more sage to find. What do you plan to do now? Link asked her, turning to see the other Gerudo were watching him, as they began moving their horses into the temple grounds. Me? I intend to leave Avil in charge as a regent, said Naburu. She will rally our people and sign a treaty between us and the other kingdoms. She's already sent word for our people to leave the occupied Hylian settlements and flee Ganondorf's tower if they haven't already. Link wasn't sure what a treaty was. He made a mental note to ask Navi later. A treaty will be difficult, said Sheik. I will do what I can, but I fear the resistance will be fierce. I know, said Avil, her lips thinning. King Nohansen invited us into his home, and on the night we celebrated the Nine Kingdoms' unity, he was butchered. Humans of all races are not quick to forgive or forget. This will be a difficult task. One I attempt to accomplish, Sheik answered. I am certain that you will, Naburu said. I will go to the Sacred Realm soon. I won't keep Naru waiting long. Make sure that you do not. It is the only way to keep this temple safe, said Sheik. Naburu nodded. I understand. Sheik gestured for Link to follow her to the stables, so that they could retrieve their horses. When they entered the stables, Link quickly remembered what Sheik had said about trouble brewing near Kakariko. There was a raid, Sheik explained after Link asked. Avil doesn't know any more details other than the attackers were undead.
Undead?
Navi asked. Link's elation died as it was washed away in a wave of dread. Whatever happened, the attack was widespread, Sheik said grimly. That didn't sound promising at all. Is that why Halvard didn't come back? Link asked. Most likely, Sheik answered, still sounding troubled. What caused them to appear now, I am not certain. Avil said the attack was repelled, so it probably wasn't Ganondorf. With that less than comforting thought, Link led Epona out of the stables. Naburu stood beside the dais, her spear raised in salute. See you soon, kid, Naburu called out to him. Take good care of him, Sheik. Sheik merely nodded.
I think she likes you,
Navi whispered to Link. Link was glad it was dark, because his cheeks burned like they were on fire. Thanks, he said through clenched teeth. He hoped Sheik hadn't heard that. She had guided her horse onto the dais and was waiting for him. Knowing Epona might spook when the portal activated, despite having been through one before, Link dismounted and took a firm hold of her reins. Handing Sheik his ocarina, he whispered a few soothing words to Epona. Then, as Sheik's haunting tune drifted into the night, the familiar blue flames erupted around them. Epona jerked her head, eyes going flat. Link held her reins tight, still murmuring softly to calm the frisked mare. The world spun, until the stars became a dizzying array of white streaks across the sky, and a bright light enveloped everything. As the spinning subsided, the air became icy. For a second, Link was sure Sheik had accidentally sent them to one of Hyrule's snow-clad mountains. As the spinning subsided, the air became icy. For a second, Link was sure Sheik had accidentally sent them to one of Hyrule's snow-clad mountains. As the world came back into focus, his breath misted in the chill air. It was snowing, too. He'd never known it to snow in spring. Disoriented, his ears ringing from the swift leap across Hyrule, it took Link longer than it should have to realize what was going on. For a second, he thought Epona was pulling and tossing her head because she was upset about being flung so many miles in an instant. Then he looked down at his tunic as a flurry of snowflakes landed on him. He brushed a hand over his sleeve, leaving a gray smear. Link looked closer at the powder on his gauntlet and frowned. Ash. It was then that he recognized the inhuman snarls coming from behind him. Another raid. His heart sank, terror gripping him as he spun to behold a sight he'd hoped to never witness again. A red glow lit the night, and fires crackled in the distance. Oh no, Navi gasped. Kakariko was on fire. It was another raid, and judging by the harsh cries of Redeads, it was exactly like the one Avil had warned them about. The iconic windmill was a raging pyre of flames, burning high into the sky. The air was growing thick with smoke, and burning embers rose like a swarm of fireflies. Debris rained from the windmill's sails as the flames consumed them. The scent of smoke, combined with the harsh sounds of combat, grew too much for Epona. She reared, twisting like an animal caught in a trap, and then flicked a hoof towards Link's face. He stepped aside to avoid the glancing blow. With difficulty, he got her under control and threw himself into the saddle as Sheik leaped onto her own steed. Together, they rode out of the graveyard, pushing their steeds at a gallop. This can't be happening, Link thought. We're so close to finding the last sage. Epona charged forward through the frigid and chaotic night. Before they even made it halfway back to the village, he heard brick and mortar quaking. It was low and soft at first, impossible to hear over their fighting within the village. With a loud snap, one of the windmill's sails succumbed to the fire and broke away, hitting the ground with a crash and hurling a flurry of embers into the sky. Then Link saw the windmill teeter forward. The structure groaned, and with a thunderous roar, wood splintered and snapped, brick crumbled, and the entire mill came crashing down. Screams followed, both from the living and the undead. Epona reared with a shriek, writhing again, and nearly throwing Link off. With his heart in his throat, Link guided her to the village. The horses approached the final corner amidst the rock-strewn path entering the village. The houses nearest to them were up in flames, and some had already collapsed. As they approached the burning wreckage, Link saw shadowy figures prowling amidst the wreckage. Navi recognized the gaunt monstrosities instantly.
Stalfos!
She quickly dismounted, steering her horse behind the rocks before flattening herself behind a boulder. Link followed her, Epona getting harder to control, her wide eyes glinting against the torchlight. Knowing any further struggle with her would only injure both of them, Link dismounted. "Sheik!" he hissed, getting close to her. "What are you doing?" She took out the ocarina and replied, "Make sure nobody notices me." "What?" He was confused, but quickly realized what Sheik was doing when she began playing the Song of Storms. People and undead alike paused in a moment of bewilderment as clouds started to amass in the red, smoke-clad sky. Link took that opportunity to send a blast of fire into a re-dead lumbering towards someone as they backed against a wall. The re-dead shrieked and burned. Unfortunately, Link didn't hit the Stalfos that was also racing towards the re-dead's would-be quarry. The person cowering by the wall shrieked as the monster rose its blade. "Hey!" Link bellowed, sprinting towards the scene. The Stalfos paused, turning just in time to see the Master Sword carve straight through the air and into its face. The terrified woman picked up her tattered skirts and fled, not even bothering to give Link a backward glance. Someone else was screaming nearby, but their attacker heard Link shout. 3 Stalfos answered his challenge with a clamor of steel. Link cleaved through one of the skeleton's vertebrae and sent another undead searching for its head. He quickly kicked the hapless monster in the ribs, knocking it over before he spun around and hacked another Stalfos in half, leaving it resting in pieces. More creatures were coming. People were shouting and rushing towards the trail leading up Death Mountain, while others formed a line between them and their attackers. Amidst the confusion, almost no one paid a second thought to the Sheikah or green-clad Hylian caught in the middle of the living dead. "Navi, watch my back!" Link yelled. Navi nodded in wordless reply and sprung higher into the air. He twirled a Master Sword in an arc as 5 Stalfos tried taking him on at once. He felled 3 in a single arc, brought up his shield to deflect a blow from the 4th, and slashed the 5th through its spine. Somewhere, Link heard a familiar battle cry. He felt a surge of hope and relief as he recognized the sound. Gorons. He spun to see Gorons charging into the village, battering the undead aside. They swung their hammers to and fro, shattering Stalfos and reducing re-deads to silent husks. Link rushed to help them. Not that they seemed to need his help. Encouraged by the sight of the burly mountain folk, soldiers in Hylian armor came crashing into the fray. A single re-dead decided to take on a Goron rather than try and flee. Before it got a chance to break its remaining teeth on the Goron's hide, a hammer splattered it into the mud. "Stupid beast!" the Goron growled. His companion looked up to see Link hacking at another skeleton, and seeing the green-clad Hylian, he bellowed a greeting. "It's Brother Link!" the Goron cried. Link groaned. "Damn it. Stop calling me that." The others joined with cries of, "Hooray! We're saved! Dodongo Buster has saved us!" Wishing the Gorons would stop with the ridiculous names, Link snarled as he dispatched another Stalfos. Sheik's face was still veiled beneath her white garbs, but he was certain that she was smirking. The Hylians, who were a good distance from Link, glanced at each other. However, they weren't given long to ponder, for bony fingers and limbs burst free from the muddy soil. Stalfos after Stalfos emerged into the night, shrieking as they broke out of their earthen tombs. A single Goron left his companions, walking over to Sheik as though nothing out of the ordinary was happening. He casually swatted a single Stalfos to the side. "Sheik? Link!" he greeted them cheerily. "It is good to see you both." "Gemite?" Sheik asked. "What's going on? Where's Rin and Halvard?" Gemite never got a chance to answer. Or, if he did, Link never noticed. A strange droning noise caught his attention. "What is that?" It took him a moment to pinpoint the strange noise. But when he did, he realized it was coming from inside Kakariko's well. Bits of burning timber lay amidst soot-covered rubble, strewn about the well's perimeter. Odd. He knew there was a seal on the well, but until now he hadn't given any consideration to its significance. "Navi, can you hear that?" Link asked as his companion joined him.
Yeah, I can.
Navi gazed in worry at the well. The ominous droning was getting louder. Sheik heard it too. Link took a step towards the well, but Sheik threw an arm out to stop him. "That better not be what I think it is," she said slowly. "What is it exactly?" Link asked. "You don't want to know. Just stay back. If anything comes out, run and find Impa or Halvard." Her voice was hard. "What? I don't understand," Link began. "Just do it!" Sheik turned, looking worried. "Gemite, get your people back!" The Goron obeyed without question. Sheik took a few tentative steps towards the well, firelight flickering on her face, revealing a look of dread. That was just as unsettling as finding Kakariko swarming with undead. The buzzing sound rose in volume. It was as though there was an enormous hornet's nest inside the well. Then, a thick black cloud burst through the seal, shattering stone and flinging debris high into the air. The entity, if it was even one, resembled a thick plague of flies. Voices whispered from within the dark mask, speaking of blood, hatred, and a desperate hunger. Sheik craned her head upwards as the demon began taking form. In the glow of the fire, Link watched as it morphed into a shape resembling a human torso, its short arms ending in two bloody stumps. Where its neck ended, there was a large, bulbous eye, which twitched as the beast took in its surroundings. It was one of the most grotesque things that Link had ever seen. Then, two hands formed on both sides of the creature, somehow moving without being attached to its stumps. What the hell is that thing? Link wondered, wishing Navi could have told him. When no word was offered, he just gaped in shocking silence. "Link, run!" Sheik yelled. Link started running towards Epona, who was still sheltered behind the rocks where he'd left her. The beast's hands moved as though attached to invisible strings. One opened, whipping straight towards Sheik. Two ghostly fingers plucked her off the ground by one leg, throwing her into the air before catching her and shaking her like a rag doll. Sheik yelled, slashing frantically and hacking her sword towards the creature's fingers. "Let her go!" Link bellowed, stopping in his tracks as he watched this unfold. The demon simply ignored him. The Gorons roared a challenge, and Link heard someone shouting orders. The Hylian soldiers had managed to kill most of the remaining undead, separating them from him and Sheik. Some of the men were pointing at the demon, while others notched bows and took aim. Several archers ran as the other hand swung towards them, swatting and splattering men as though they were mere insects. An arrow whizzed past, striking the hand holding Sheik, the weapon's shaft looking no bigger than a thorn compared to the monster's hand. Link ran forward, just as Sheik heaved her sword into the hand's palm. The creature dropped her, and she slammed into a brick wall with a crunch. She went down limply, falling like a sack. Link's breath left him. "Sheik?" he asked weakly. She didn't move. He called out with more urgency. "Sheik!" Several of the Hylians were already running towards the fallen Sheikah, giving no heed to Link.
Link, we have to help!
Navi yelled. Link nodded and broke into a run, sprinting as fast as he could towards Epona. The creature's form had already dissolved, and this time, the entity was shooting straight towards him like a thick cloud of black insects.
"It's after us!"
Navi cried. Link spun on his heels and saw the creature tear the air. Knowing he could not outrun it, Link braced himself and held his sword so tight that his fingers hurt. He channeled light magic into the blade and charged at the demon with an angry cry. It was a stupid move, but by the time he realized his error, it was too late. The monster slammed into Link's shield with the force of a rampant bull. His ribs cracked as he hit the muddy earth. Gasping, he tried to roll onto his stomach and bring himself to his knees. Somewhere nearby, Epona shrieked. There was a thunder of hooves as she galloped off into the night, fleeing like the Demon King himself was after her. The Shadow Beast engulfed Link, plunging him into total darkness. A peculiar sensation ran along his skin, as though he'd been plunged into an icy pond, and was now being pulled slowly under. Link wanted to scream as the shadow further smothered him, his left hand burning with pain. He tried in vain to draw breath, but it was as though something cold were pressing down on him. He couldn't breathe. With a jolt of horror, Link realized the creature was drawing energy from him. He sought the Triforce's comforting presence and felt something stir inside of him as it answered his call. He could sense it now, a light amidst the darkness. He clung to it, clutching it, as though it was the only thing that stood between him and drowning in a storm. The creature's hungry murmurs grew louder. It cackled in excitement, certain of its triumph. Link felt his tenuous grip on Courage's power slip, and the world grew colder still. The Triforce of Courage was not going to be enough to save him from this entity. Link's lungs screamed for air, but he still couldn't breathe. Focusing as hard as he could, Link drew on Courage's power. He didn't hold back this time, but allowed it to flood into him and surge through his body. A flash of green light burst across his vision, leaving him dazed. The creature's oppressive weight lifted, and Link sucked in air, heaving violently. He crawled towards the Master Sword, his limbs feeling like lead as he moved forward. He saw a flicker of light through the corner of one eye. Sheik was on her feet and leaning against the wall she'd fallen against. Her palms were stretched outwards towards the demon. Several of the guards were standing near her side. 3 others were still trying to riddle the demon with arrows, without much success. The demon retreated, howling in pain as it did so. The remaining Stalfos turned, saw their master flee, and took flight. The few re-dead that remained were not so fortunate, and their never-ending torment was brought to a quick end. As Link's fingers finally clung to the Master Sword's hilt, his vision blurred. He struggled to take in air, and despite the fires raging around him, he shivered violently. He could hear muffled voices, but couldn't make out any words as darkness claimed him. His head hit the Master Sword's hilt with a painful thump,